Hello, beautiful adventurers, and welcome to the very first episode of Wanderlust Guide, Solo Traveler Edition. I'm Clara, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be starting this journey with all of you today.
And I'm Leo. Clara and I will be your companions as we explore the world's most exciting and welcoming destinations for solo travelers. We'll be sharing everything from cultural experiences to safety tips to help you make the most of your solo adventures.
That's right, Leo, and we're kicking things off today with Episode 1, Solo Travel 101, Getting Started on Your Solo Adventure. Perfect for those who might be feeling a bit nervous about taking that first step into the wonderful world of solo travel.
I remember my first solo trip like it was yesterday. I was so worried about everything that could go wrong, but it ended up being the most liberating experience of my life.
Same here, and that's exactly why we wanted to create this podcast. Solo travel can seem intimidating at first, but once you take that leap, it opens up a whole new world of possibilities and self-discovery.
Absolutely. Throughout this series, we'll be taking you through different regions of the world, sharing insider tips, and hopefully inspiring you to book that ticket you've been dreaming about.
And today's episode is all about the basics: why solo travel might be right for you, how to overcome those initial anxieties, essential safety tips, planning your first trip, and what to pack. So shall we dive right in?
Let's do it.
So Leo, let's start with the big question. Why solo travel? What makes traveling alone such a transformative experience?
Oh, there are so many reasons. First and foremost, it's the absolute freedom. When you travel solo, you can have complete control over what you do, when you do it, and how you do it. Want to sleep until noon and then order room service? Go for it. Want to be up at 6 a.m. to catch the sunrise? Also totally fine.
Yes, that's one of my favorite aspects of solo travel. You never have to compromise on your interests or preferences. If you love museums, you can spend the entire day in one without feeling guilty that you're boring your travel companion.
Exactly. And if you hate museums, guess what? You don't have to set foot in a single one. It's all about creating your perfect trip.
Another incredible benefit is the self-discovery aspect. When you travel alone, you learn so much about yourself, your capabilities, your preferences, your strengths. It's like a crash course in self-awareness.
Absolutely. I found out I'm actually way more outgoing than I thought when I'm in a new environment. There's something about being in a different place that brings out different sides of your personality.
And you know what's fascinating? Solo travel is becoming increasingly popular globally. It's not just a niche thing anymore. According to many travel experts, including those at nomadicmat.com, solo female travel in particular is steadily on the rise.
That's so true. I see it everywhere, especially on social media. People are showcasing their solo adventures and inspiring others to take the leap.
Another benefit that people might not think about is that you actually tend to meet more people when traveling alone. When you're by yourself, you're much more approachable and more likely to strike up conversations with strangers.
I've made some of my closest friends that way. There was this time in a hostel in Portugal where I ended up chatting with this woman from New Zealand at breakfast, and we wound up traveling together for the next week. We still keep in touch 3 years later.
That's beautiful. Solo travel doesn't always mean being alone. It often means you have the freedom to connect with new people on your own terms.
Exactly. And practical considerations aside, solo travel can be more cost-effective too. You're only paying for one person, you can take advantage of single traveler deals, and it's easier to find one award seat on a flight than multiple seats together.
Plus, when you're booking just for yourself, you can be super flexible with dates, which often leads to better deals. I've snagged some amazing last-minute flights because I didn't have to coordinate with anyone else's schedule.
I think the most important thing to remember is that you shouldn't let the lack of a travel companion keep you from experiencing the world. As the Point Sky website says, don't let the lack of a travel companion keep you from missing out on an amazing experience.
Absolutely. Life is too short to wait for other people to be ready for adventure. Sometimes you just have to go for it on your own.
Now let's talk about something really important, overcoming that initial anxiety about solo travel. Clara, I know you've mentioned before that you were nervous before your first solo trip. What was that like?
Oh my goodness, I was terrified. I remember sitting at the airport before my first solo international trip thinking, what am I doing? This is crazy. But you know what? Once I arrived at my destination and navigated getting to my hotel, I felt this incredible surge of confidence, like, wow, I can actually do this.
That's exactly how it goes. I think a lot of people build up solo travel in their minds as this enormous, scary thing, when in reality, it's just a series of small, manageable steps.
Definitely. And I think one of the best ways to overcome that initial anxiety is to start small. You don't have to jump straight into a 3-month backpacking trip through Southeast Asia for your first solo adventure.
Right. In fact, according to an article one read on BuzzFeed, one of the best tips for first-time solo travelers is to go somewhere you're already somewhat familiar with. Maybe a place where they speak your language or has a culture similar to yours.
Yes, the article mentioned that the most important part of your first trip is making sure you're as comfortable as possible. It's like dipping your toe in the water before diving in completely. For example, if you're an English speaker, maybe start with a trip to the UK, Ireland, Australia, or Canada.
Exactly. My first solo trip was actually just a weekend away in a city in my own country. It was close enough that I could easily get home if I needed to, but far enough that it still felt like an adventure.
That's such a smart approach. Another tip for overcoming anxiety is to prepare thoroughly. The more you know about your destination, the less anxious you'll feel.
Absolutely. Research the area you're staying in, learn about local customs, maybe even learn a few phrases in the local language. It all helps to build confidence.
And connect with others who have done solo travel before. There are so many online communities now where you can ask questions and get advice from experienced solo travelers.
Definitely. I found so much support in online travel forums before my first big trip. Knowing that others had successfully navigated the same challenges was so reassuring.
One mental exercise that I find really helpful is to remind yourself that you navigate new situations at home all the time. You can figure out public transportation, order food, find your way around new neighborhoods. Traveling solo just applies those same skills in a new setting.
That's such a good point. We're more capable than we give ourselves credit for. And honestly, sometimes the anxiety itself can be part of the adventure. That rush of adrenaline when you're doing something new and slightly scary, that's where the growth happens.
Exactly. One of my favorite quotes that I read on the Relevant magazine website is that solo travel didn't solve all my problems, but it gave me clarity, confidence, and a deeper sense of agency than any group trip ever had. I think that's so true.
I love that. And remember, being nervous is normal and totally okay. It doesn't mean you shouldn't go, it just means you're about to do something meaningful and growth-inducing.
Let's move on to another crucial topic, safety. This is something that comes up a lot, especially for women considering solo travel.
Absolutely. Safety concerns are valid, but they shouldn't prevent anyone from traveling solo. It's all about being prepared and aware.
Exactly. And I think it's important to note that the world isn't as scary as the news makes it out to be. According to an expert solo female traveler quoted in a CNN article, she's been to more than 50 countries on her own and never once had a really scary or dangerous encounter.
That's reassuring to hear. And it aligns with what most experienced solo travelers say, that with the right precautions, solo travel is generally safe.
Yes, the key phrase there is with the right precautions. So let's talk about some universal safety tips that apply pretty much everywhere.
One of the most important things is to research your destination thoroughly before you go. Learn about common scams, areas to avoid, and local customs.
Absolutely. And always share your itinerary with someone back home. Let them know where you'll be staying and check in regularly.
That's such an important one. I always share my accommodation details and flight information with at least 2 people back home. And with technology now, it's so easy to stay connected.
Speaking of technology, make sure your phone works where you're going. Get a local SIM card or an international plan so you can make calls if needed.
And download offline maps of your destination before you go. That way, if you lose service or your data doesn't work, you can still find your way around.
Another tip is to be careful with alcohol when traveling alone. I'm not saying don't enjoy yourself, but being intoxicated can make you more vulnerable.
Definitely. And always keep an eye on your drink when you're out at bars or restaurants. Unfortunately, drink spiking can happen anywhere in the world.
Trust your instincts too. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't worry about being polite if you feel uncomfortable in a situation.
That's such an important point. I remember being in a taxi once where the driver started taking a route that seemed way off from where I needed to go. I spoke up immediately, and while it turned out he was just avoiding traffic, I never regretted advocating for myself in that moment.
Exactly. Better safe than sorry. And don't forget to secure your valuables. Use the safe in your accommodation if there is one, and consider carrying a money belt or anti-theft bag when you're out and about.
Digital safety is important too. Be careful about using public Wi-Fi for sensitive transactions, and consider using a VPN for added security.
All great points. And I think it's worth emphasizing that while safety is important, we shouldn't let fear rule our travels. As one solo female traveler put it in the CNN article, I understand that safety can be a big concern for people in unfamiliar situations. That being said, I think you can be prepared without having to live in fear, whether at home or abroad.
That's a perfect way to look at it. Be prepared, be aware, but don't let fear stop you from having amazing experiences. Now let's talk about planning your first solo trip. This is where the rubber meets the road, as they say.
Yes, and I love this part because it's where the excitement really starts to build. So first things first, how do you choose your destination?
That's a great question. As we mentioned earlier, for your first solo trip, it's often best to choose somewhere that feels accessible to you. Maybe a place where you speak the language or that has good infrastructure for tourists.
Absolutely, and think about what kind of experience you want. Are you looking for a cultural immersion, a relaxing beach vacation, an adventure-filled trip? Different destinations offer very different experiences.
That's such a good point. I found a great tip on Relevant Magazine's website that suggests figuring out your main goal for the trip and then planning what you want to spend money on based around that.
Oh, I love that approach. If your main goal is to enjoy amazing food, then maybe you spend less on accommodation and more on dining experiences. If you're all about museums and culture, you might prioritize your budget differently.
Exactly. It helps you create a trip that's meaningful to you, not just ticking off tourist sites because you feel like you should.
When it comes to booking accommodation, I'd recommend starting with places that have lots of good reviews, especially from solo travelers. Many booking sites let you filter reviews by traveler type now.
That's a great tip, and consider the location carefully. It might be worth paying a bit more to stay in a central, safe area rather than saving a few dollars but being far from everything or in a sketchy neighborhood.
Absolutely. According to Relevant Magazine, you don't have to crash in a party hostel to prove you're adventurous. A quiet Airbnb, boutique hotel, or guest house in a safe, central area might be worth the extra cost for peace of mind.
And speaking of accommodation, hostels can be amazing for solo travelers who want to meet people. Many have private rooms if you're not up for dormitory living, but still offer common areas and organized activities where you can socialize.
That's such a good point. Hostelworld.com mentions that while solo travel might seem scary at first, staying in hostels is one of the best ways to get the most out of your adventure and make new lifelong friends.
Definitely. Now let's talk about creating an itinerary. I think it's important to have some structure, but also leave room for spontaneity.
I completely agree. I usually book my accommodation and any must-do activities in advance, but leave plenty of free time for wandering and discoveries.
That's a perfect approach. And according to BuzzFeed, it's smart to book certain things well in advance because they'll be much cheaper. For example, train tickets in Europe can be a fraction of the price if you book them months ahead versus the week of travel.
Oh yes, I learned that lesson the hard way once. Wanted to take the Eurostar from Paris to London and waited until the last minute. Ended up paying about 3 times what I would have if I'd booked earlier.
Ouch. But hey, travel lessons are usually learned the hard way, right? That's part of the adventure.
Absolutely. And one last planning tip I'd like to share. Consider starting your trip with a guided tour or activity. It can be a great way to get oriented in a new place and possibly meet some fellow travelers right off the bat.
That's brilliant. I did a walking tour on my first day in Berlin, and it not only helped me understand the city layout, but I ended up getting dinner with 2 other solo travelers I met on the tour.
All right, let's move on to our final segment, essential packing for solo travelers. This is something I get asked about all the time.
Oh, this is a good one. I think the golden rule here is pack light. You'll thank yourself later when you're lugging your own suitcase up 5 flights of stairs in a charming but elevator-less European hotel.
Been there, done that. And yes, when you're traveling solo, you're responsible for carrying all your own stuff all the time. So being selective about what you bring is crucial.
Absolutely. But there are also some items that are especially important for solo travelers. Let's talk about those.
First up, I'd say a good crossbody bag or a money belt for your valuables. When you're on your own, keeping your passport, cards, and cash secure is extra important.
Definitely. And a portable phone charger or power bank is essential. Your phone is not just for photos and social media when you're traveling solo. It's your map, translator, emergency contact device, and so much more.
That's such a good point. I never leave home without my high-capacity power bank. And speaking of phones, make sure you have the right adapters for charging in your destination country.
Yes. And download useful apps before you go. Offline maps, translation apps, your accommodation apps, and maybe a safety app that lets your trusted contacts track your location.
According to that CNN article, noise-canceling wireless headphones are also a must-have for many experienced solo travelers. They're great for long flights or bus rides, and can also be a signal to others that you're not looking to chat at the moment if you need some alone time.
Oh, that's so true. Sometimes you need a break from socializing, and headphones are the universal not now sign, but make sure you're still aware of your surroundings, especially in unfamiliar places.
Absolutely. Safety first. Another essential item is a small first aid kit with basics like pain relievers, band-aids, antihistamines, and any prescription medications you need.
Yes, and make sure to bring enough of any prescription meds, plus a copy of the prescription using the generic drug name, just in case.
Good call. I'd also recommend bringing a doorstop or portable door lock for extra security in your accommodation. It's a small item that can provide great peace of mind.
That's a fantastic tip. And don't forget copies of your important documents, passport, insurance info, visa documents. Have digital copies in your email or cloud storage, and maybe a physical copy stored separately from the originals.
Very important. And one last thing, pack something that makes you feel comfortable and at home. For me, it's a small travel candle with a familiar scent. It helps make unfamiliar hotel rooms feel a bit more personal.
I love that. For me, it's a small photo of my dog. Just a little reminder of home when I'm feeling a bit lonely or homesick.
Oh, that's sweet. Solo travel can get lonely sometimes, and it's okay to acknowledge that and prepare for it.
Absolutely. And speaking of preparing for different emotions, one of my favorite tips from BuzzFeed was to keep reminding yourself that you will never be X age in Y city again in your life. That perspective really helps you embrace the experience fully.
Oh, I love that. It reminds you to be present and appreciate the unique moment you're in, rather than worrying about what you might be missing or what could go wrong.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about why solo travel is amazing, how to overcome those initial fears, safety considerations, planning tips, and what to pack. Any final thoughts, Claire?
I think my biggest takeaway is just to go for it. As we read on Relevant Magazine's website, I just got tired of waiting for friends to commit, waiting for the perfect time, waiting for a trip to line up with everyone else's calendar. That resonates with me so much.
Yes. Life is too short to wait for the perfect conditions to start exploring the world. And remember, solo travel doesn't mean you'll always be alone, unless you want to be. It just means you have the freedom to create your own perfect adventure.
Exactly. And even if things don't go perfectly, which they won't, because that's travel, you'll still come away with amazing stories, new perspectives, and a stronger sense of your own capabilities.
Absolutely. As they say on women-on-the-road.com, solo travel changes you in incredible ways. It builds confidence, resilience, versatility, and self-reliance.
And those are skills and traits that benefit you not just in travel, but in all areas of life. That's what makes solo travel such a powerful experience.
I couldn't agree more. So what are we covering in our next episode?
Next time, we'll be exploring European gems for solo adventurers. We'll dive into the most solo-friendly destinations across Europe, focusing on countries and cities known for safety, efficient public transportation, and welcoming atmospheres for independent travelers.
I can't wait. We'll be covering Nordic havens like Iceland, Denmark, and Finland, the solo traveler's Mediterranean dream of Portugal, Central European circuits, and so much more.
It's going to be fantastic. So tune in for our next episode to discover the perfect European destinations for your solo adventure.
And that wraps up our very first episode of Wanderlust Guide Solo Traveler Edition. We hope this has been helpful in getting you started on your solo travel journey.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend who might be considering solo travel. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our upcoming episodes full of specific destination guides and advanced solo travel tips.
Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and remember, the world is waiting for you, whether you have a travel buddy or not.
Safe travels, everyone. Hello and welcome to European Escapes. Solo Travel Made Easy. I'm Clara, your enthusiastic guide to the world of independent European adventures.
And I'm Leo, joining Clara on this journey to help you discover the joys of exploring Europe on your own terms. We're so excited to kick off this podcast series.
That's right. Over the next 6 episodes, we'll be covering everything you need to know about solo travel across Europe, from essential planning tips to specific regional guides and special considerations for different types of travelers.
And today we're starting with the absolute foundation. Episode 1, Solo Travel Essentials, Planning Your European Adventure. Because let's face it, a little preparation goes a long way toward making your solo trip amazing.
Exactly. And I'm particularly excited about this topic because planning is honestly half the fun of travel for me. There's something so thrilling about mapping out all the possibilities before you even leave home.
I couldn't agree more. And speaking from personal experience, the planning stage can really set you up for success. Remember when I went to Barcelona last year with basically no plan? I ended up spending half my time just figuring out logistics instead of enjoying myself.
Oh gosh, yes. That's the travel nightmare we want to help our listeners avoid. So let's dive right in with our first segment, Why Europe is Perfect for Solo Travelers.
So, Clara, what makes Europe such an ideal destination for someone venturing out on their first solo trip?
Well, Europe has so many advantages, but I'd say the public transportation networks top my list. From high-speed trains connecting major cities to efficient metro systems within them, you really don't need a car or a travel buddy to get around.
That's such a good point. I think one of my favorite things about traveling in Europe is how I can just hop on a train in Paris and be in Amsterdam for lunch. It's incredible freedom, especially for solo travelers.
Absolutely. And we can't overlook the high safety standards in many European countries. According to several travel experts, many European destinations rank among the safest in the world for solo travelers, particularly Nordic countries and places like Switzerland.
Safety is definitely key when you're on your own. And let's talk about language barriers, or the lack of them in many cases. The widespread English proficiency across Europe makes things so much easier.
Yes, especially in places like Scandinavia, the Netherlands, and even Germany, you'll find that most people speak excellent English. That said, I always try to learn a few basic phrases in the local language. It's just respectful, you know?
Totally agree. Even just hello, thank you, and where's the bathroom can take you far. And speaking of going far, Europe's rich cultural experiences are so accessible to individuals. You don't need a group to enjoy a museum, see a historic site, or enjoy a concert.
Oh my goodness, yes. I actually prefer experiencing museums solo because I can go at my own pace. I can spend an hour looking at one painting if I want to, or breeze through galleries that don't interest me as much.
The freedom is amazing. And finally, let's not forget the well-established tourist infrastructure. From hostels designed with solo travelers in mind to walking tours where you can meet other travelers, Europe really caters to independent explorers.
Absolutely. As that article from Women on the Road points out, whatever you're looking for, culture, history, music, fun, romance, food, a backpacking trip through Europe will provide it. I couldn't agree more.
You know what's funny? Sometimes I actually meet more people when I'm traveling alone than when I'm with friends. I'm just more approachable and probably more willing to strike up conversations.
That's been my experience too. Solo travel doesn't have to mean lonely travel. Now let's move on to our next segment, pre-trip planning essentials.
All right, so you've decided to explore Europe solo, fantastic choice. But where do you start with planning? Clara, what's your first consideration when planning a European adventure?
For me, it's always about timing. The best seasons for solo European travel really depend on what you're looking for. Summer is vibrant and full of energy, but can be crowded and more expensive. Personally, I'm a big fan of shoulder seasons.
Oh yes, spring and fall are magical in Europe. September and May are my go-to months. The weather is usually still pleasant, but the summer crowds have thinned out and prices drop significantly.
Exactly. And winter has its own charm too, especially if you're into Christmas markets or skiing. But regardless of when you go, creating a flexible but structured itinerary is key for solo travelers.
I've found that sweet spot is having my accommodations and major transportation booked, but leaving plenty of free days for spontaneous adventures. The savvy backpacker suggests that spending a little time planning your trip will pay dividends in the long run, and I couldn't agree more.
That's exactly my approach. And speaking of planning, understanding visa requirements and travel documents is crucial, especially with the new ETIAS system coming to the EU.
Yes, starting in 2025, travelers from many countries, including the US, Canada, and Australia, will need to register online before visiting the Schengen zone countries. It's not a traditional visa, but it is an extra step people need to know about.
Absolutely. And while we're talking practical matters, setting up international phone plans and digital tools is another essential. I always make sure I have offline maps downloaded, translation apps ready, and some way to stay connected.
Good point. That reminds me of something I read in an article for solo travelers. While mentally and physically untethering from your mobile devices is important for you to truly savor the joys of your trip, it's equally vital that you keep them charged. Having a portable battery pack can be a lifesaver.
Oh, absolutely. I never leave home without mine. The last thing you want is to have your phone die when you're trying to find your accommodation in a strange city at night.
And let's not forget travel insurance considerations, which can be even more important for solo adventurers. Having that safety net gives you peace of mind when you're on your own.
100%. As Nomadic Map puts it, travel insurance is one of the most important things you'll need for your trip. It's something I never skip, especially for solo adventures. Let's move on to our next segment, Safety First, Smart Practices for Solo Travelers.
Safety is obviously a top concern for solo travelers, but I think it's important to strike a balance. As one experienced solo traveler put it, I think you can be prepared without having to live in fear, whether at home or abroad.
That's such a healthy perspective. It's about being aware without being paranoid. The first step is always researching country-specific safety information before you go. Every destination has its own unique considerations.
Absolutely. For instance, pickpocketing might be more common in certain tourist areas of Barcelona or Rome, while other risks might be more prevalent elsewhere. Knowledge really is power when it comes to staying safe.
And in our digital age, we shouldn't forget about digital security measures for your devices. Using VPNs on public Wi-Fi, being careful about which ATMs you use, and keeping digital copies of important documents are all smart practices.
Speaking of important documents, establishing emergency contact protocols and communication plans can be a lifesaver. I always share my itinerary with someone back home and check in regularly.
That's so important. I also register with my country's embassy through their traveler programs when visiting less familiar areas. And let's talk about navigating unfamiliar environments safely. I'm a big believer in arriving at new destinations during daylight hours whenever possible.
Yes, I read that same advice in Women on the Road. Reserve your first night. It can be a bit daunting to alight in a new place for the first time, but nothing is worse than landing at night, tired, disorganized. Such good advice.
Definitely. And I'll add one more safety tip that served me well: trusting your instincts while remaining open to experiences. If something feels off, it probably is, but that doesn't mean closing yourself off to new connections.
Finding that balance is key. Some of my most memorable travel experiences have come from spontaneous conversations with locals or other travelers, but always in situations where I felt comfortable.
Exactly. Now let's discuss another practical aspect of solo travel planning: budgeting for solo European adventures. When it comes to budgeting for Europe, understanding the cost differences across European regions is crucial. There's a massive variation between, say, Stockholm and Sofia.
Oh my goodness, yes. On my last trip, I spent more on one dinner in Norway than I did on 3 days of meals in Portugal. The cost variations can be startling.
Portugal is actually mentioned specifically in one of our sources as the darling of solo travel to Europe, partly because it's such good value. Eastern Europe is also generally more budget-friendly than Western or Northern Europe.
Accommodation is usually the biggest expense, but solo travelers have so many options these days, from hostels to boutique hotels. What's your preference, Clara?
It really depends on the trip. Sometimes I love the social atmosphere of a good hostel. They're not just for 20-year-olds anymore. Many have private rooms with shared common spaces, which is perfect for meeting people without sacrificing privacy.
That's a great point. And for those who prefer more privacy, there are so many affordable boutique hotels and guest houses now, especially if you're willing to stay slightly outside the main tourist centers.
Absolutely. Transportation budgeting is another big consideration. Rail passes can be a good value if you're covering a lot of ground, but sometimes budget airlines are actually cheaper for longer distances.
I'm a big fan of researching transportation options thoroughly. Sometimes a slightly longer bus ride can save you significant money over a train, and in many European cities, public transportation is so good that you really don't need taxis.
Let's talk about dining strategies that won't break the bank. One of my favorites is having my main meal at lunch when many restaurants offer special prix-fixe menus at a fraction of their dinner prices.
That's so smart. I also love visiting local markets and putting together picnics, especially in places with beautiful parks or waterfronts. It's both budget-friendly and gives you a taste of local life.
And don't forget to build in flexibility for unexpected opportunities. Some of my best travel experiences have been spontaneous splurges I hadn't budgeted for, like when I stumbled upon that amazing food festival in Lyon.
Oh, I remember you telling me about that. Sometimes those unplanned experiences end up being the highlights of the trip. Now let's shift gears to packing smart for independent travel. Packing for solo travel has a completely different strategy than when you're traveling with others. Nobody's there to lend you that extra sweater or share toiletries.
Exactly. And you're also carrying everything yourself, so lightweight essentials for maximum mobility are crucial. I've become such a convert to the concept of packing light.
Me too. I used to be that person with the massive suitcase, but now I can do 2 weeks in Europe with just a carry-on. Multi-purpose clothing and accessories make all the difference.
Yes. Items like a lightweight scarf that can be a fashion accessory, a beach wrap, or an extra layer on chilly evenings, or pants that zip off into shorts. The versatility saves so much space.
And let's not forget technology and adapters for European outlets. I learned the hard way that not all European countries use the same plugs, and finding an adapter in a small town on a Sunday can be nearly impossible.
Oh no, that's exactly the kind of situation we want to help listeners avoid. I always bring a universal adapter with multiple USB ports. It's a game changer for charging multiple devices.
Security items like locks and RFID wallets are also essential for solo travelers. I feel so much more confident knowing my passport and credit cards are protected from electronic theft.
Absolutely, and a sturdy lock for hostile lockers or even for securing your bag to a fixed object in certain situations. One experienced solo female traveler I read about mentioned always carrying a personal alarm, which I think is a great idea too.
Health essentials and personal comfort items round out my packing list. Basic medications, any prescriptions you need, and comfort items that help you sleep well in unfamiliar environments.
Yes, as one travel expert put it, one of the most important things you can do to see to your well-being is get enough rest. Having earplugs, an eye mask, or whatever helps you sleep can make a huge difference to your travel experience.
Speaking of well-being, that's a perfect segue into our final segment for today, mental preparation for solo travel.
I think the mental aspect of solo travel is just as important as the practical planning, maybe even more so. Embracing uncertainty and spontaneity can be challenging for some people, but it's also what makes solo travel so rewarding.
Absolutely. I remember my first solo trip. I was so anxious about everything going perfectly according to plan, but once I learned to embrace the unexpected moments, that's when the magic really happened.
Yes, like that quote from The Points Guy. If you've never traveled alone before, the thought can be intimidating. But once you hit the road, you might find your own company is the best company. I've found that to be so true.
Let's talk about strategies for combating loneliness, which can be a real concern for solo travelers. What's worked for you, Clara?
I find that staying in social accommodations like hostels or guest houses with common areas really helps. Also, joining walking tours or cooking classes is a great way to meet people with similar interests.
Those are great suggestions. I've also found that being a regular at a local cafe or restaurant can create a sense of connection. There's something comforting about the barista recognizing you after a few days.
Building confidence for dining and exploring alone is another important aspect of mental preparation. I remember feeling so awkward the first time I asked for a table for one at a nice restaurant.
Oh, I've been there. One tip I read that really helped me was, don't be afraid to take a book or an iPad with you for company. Having something to occupy yourself with until the food arrives can make solo dining much more comfortable.
Great tip. Setting intentions for your journey is another aspect of mental preparation I find helpful. Whether it's learning something new, challenging yourself, or simply relaxing, having a purpose beyond just sightseeing enriches the experience.
I love that approach. And finally, creating balance between planned activities and flexible time is crucial for mental well-being. I always build in some downtime to just wander, reflect, or even do nothing at all.
That's so important. As one solo travel expert put it, solo travel is an enriching experience. It doesn't just allow you to see the world, experience new things, and awaken the open, adventurous spirit inside you. It also teaches you strength, resilience, versatility, self-reliance, and more.
I couldn't agree more. Solo travel has taught me so much about myself and has given me confidence that extends far beyond my travels.
Well, that brings us to the end of our first episode of European Escapes, Solo Travel Made Easy. We've covered why Europe is perfect for solo travelers, essential pre-trip planning, safety considerations, budgeting strategies, packing tips, and mental preparation.
I hope we've inspired our listeners to take the leap into solo travel in Europe. As we've discussed, with some thoughtful planning and the right mindset, it can be an incredibly rewarding experience.
Absolutely. And remember what we learned from the Women on the Road website? Whatever you're looking for, culture, history, music, fun, romance, food, a backpacking trip through Europe will provide it. Solo travel just adds another dimension to that experience.
Join us next time for episode 2, Northern European Gems, Scandinavia, and the Netherlands, where we'll explore some of the most solo-friendly destinations in Northern Europe, from Copenhagen's bicycle culture to Amsterdam's scenic canals.
We'll be diving into what makes these destinations ideal for independent travelers, with their excellent English proficiency, outstanding safety records, and well-organized public transportation.
Plus, we'll share specific tips for accommodation, dining solo, and connecting with locals in each city. You won't want to miss it.
Thanks so much for listening to European Escapes, Solo Travel Made Easy. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend who might be considering a solo adventure of their own.
Until next time, happy planning and safe travels. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Stockholm Insights, everyone. I'm Leo, and I am absolutely thrilled to be launching this podcast with you today.
And I'm Clara. Thanks for joining us for our very first episode. We're excited to bring you this series all about exploring Stockholm as a solo traveler.
That's right. And let me tell you, there is no better city for solo adventures than Stockholm. It's like the city was designed with independent travelers in mind.
Before we dive in, let's give our listeners a quick overview of what they can expect from this series. We'll be covering everything from navigating the city
to discovering those hidden gems that only locals know about. And of course, all the amazing food you simply must try. Oh, and the Swedish culture, so fascinating.
Today's episode is Getting Started, Navigating Stockholm as a Solo Traveler. We'll cover the essentials for planning your trip, transportation options, accommodation recommendations, and practical tips for efficiently getting around.
I can't wait to share all this with our listeners. Stockholm completely stole my heart when I first visited as a solo traveler 3 years ago. Remember when I missed my flight back and ended up staying an extra week? Best mistake I ever made.
How could I forget? You wouldn't stop talking about it for months. Let's start with an overview of Stockholm itself, shall we?
Absolutely. So listeners, picture this, a stunning city built across 14 islands where lake meets sea. The locals call it beauty on water, and trust me, that description doesn't even do it justice.
Stockholm really is unique geographically. The archipelago structure with all those islands connected by bridges gives the city a special character. There's water everywhere you look.
And the water is so clean you can actually swim in it right in the middle of the city. I did that last summer and it was magical. When else can you take a refreshing dip between museum visits?
I'm still not convinced that was entirely legal, Leo.
The locals were doing it. Anyway, timing your visit is important. Summer gives you those incredible long daylight hours. The sun barely sets. It's perfect for maximizing your sightseeing and just wandering around.
While winter offers a completely different but equally charming experience with Christmas markets in the Old Town or Gamla Stan, all covered in snow, it's like stepping into a fairy tale.
I need to experience winter in Stockholm. I bet the locals don't let the cold slow them down one bit. They probably embrace it with open arms.
They do have a saying there, there's no bad weather, only bad clothing. But perhaps more relevant to our listeners is understanding Allemansrätten, the right to roam.
Oh yes, this is such a fantastic concept. It basically means you have the freedom to walk, cycle, camp, and pick berries or mushrooms on any land that isn't private residential property. It's part of what makes Sweden so friendly for explorers.
Just remember it comes with responsibilities too. You can't damage nature or disturb wildlife, but it does represent the Swedish openness that makes solo traveling there help so comfortable.
Stockholm is just perfect for solo travelers. It's safe, easy to navigate, and the Swedes are incredibly helpful if you need assistance, even if they might seem a bit reserved at first.
And almost everyone speaks excellent English, which removes a major barrier for international travelers.
Exactly. I didn't know a word of Swedish on my first visit, and I got along just fine. Though I do recommend learning a few basic phrases, it's appreciated and can lead to some lovely interactions.
Let's move on to getting there and around the city. Stockholm has several airports, with Arlanda being the main international one.
And getting from Arlanda to the city center is a breeze. You have multiple options. There's the Arlanda Express train, which is super fast, taking just 20 minutes to the central station. It's my personal favorite because it's so efficient and comfortable.
It is convenient, but also the most expensive option. Budget travelers might prefer the Flybusarna airport coaches or the commuter train, which are cheaper but take a bit longer.
True, but even the bus only takes about 45 minutes, which isn't bad at all. And the views along the way are quite nice. No matter what you choose, you'll find it really straightforward.
Once you're in the city, understanding the SL card system for public transportation is essential. It's Stockholm's integrated ticket system for buses, metros, trams, and some ferries.
Oh, the SL card was a game changer for me. You can get 24-hour, 72-hour, 7-day passes, and then just hop on and off transportation as much as you want. It's so liberating not having to buy individual tickets each time.
Just make sure you tap in at the beginning of each journey. And it's worth noting that Stockholm has 3 interlinked central stations. Stockholm Central for mainline trains, Stockholm City for commuter trains, and T-Centralen for the metro.
That confused me a bit at first, I'll admit, but once you understand they're all connected but serve different types of trains, it makes perfect sense. And the signage is excellent.
Speaking of Stockholm Central Station, navigating it can be tricky if you have a tight connection. The station has multiple levels, and it's not always intuitive which platform you need.
But don't worry. The staff at the information desks are incredibly helpful. I once had just 10 minutes to make a connection and was completely lost, but a friendly attendant practically escorted me to the right platform. I made it with 2 whole minutes to spare. Talk about Swedish efficiency.
For those who prefer to be prepared, you can check the SJ website or app for platform information before your trip. They usually update platform assignments about 30 minutes before departure.
Stockholm is also a fantastic walking city. I spent entire days just scrolling along the waterfronts. There are beautiful pedestrian paths connecting many of the islands, and walking gives you such a great feel for the city.
Cycling is another great option. The city has an extensive network of bike lanes, and there are several rental services like city bikes, where you can pick up and drop off bikes at various stations around the city.
I love cycling in Stockholm. It's flat enough to be enjoyable even if you're not usually a cyclist. And it's so freeing to zip around from island to island with the wind in your hair and all those gorgeous views everywhere you look.
Don't forget about the ferries too. They're not just for tourists. Locals use them regularly to get between islands. Some routes are even included with your SL card.
Oh, the ferries are magical. Taking a ferry to Djurgården on a sunny day was one of my favorite Stockholm experiences. You get these incredible views of the city from the water, and it just feels so, I don't know, quintessentially Stockholm.
Let's talk about accommodation options. Stockholm has everything from luxury hotels to budget hostels and everything in between.
And the great news for solo travelers is that there are plenty of social hostels where you can meet other travelers. I stayed at City Backpackers on my first visit and made friends from all over the world during their communal dinner.
Hostels are definitely the most budget-friendly option in what can otherwise be an expensive city. Some other well-regarded ones include Generator Stockholm and Castania Old Town Hostel in Gamla Stan.
For those with a mid-range budget, there are some fantastic boutique hotels that showcase Swedish design. Hotel Skeppsholmen is on its own little island and housed in a historic building from the 1600s with modern Swedish minimalist interiors. It's stunning.
And for luxury travelers, places like the Grand Hotel offer 5-star accommodations with waterfront views. But be prepared, luxury in Stockholm comes with a luxury price tag.
One thing I love about Stockholm hotels is how they often include breakfast, and Swedish breakfasts are amazing. All those delicious breads, cheeses, and don't get me started on the coffee. Swedes take their coffee very seriously.
When choosing where to stay, consider what you want to be close to. Gamla Stan is historic and charming but can be touristy. Södermalm is trendy with great restaurants and bars.
Östermalm's upscale and elegant, while Norrmalm is the modern city center with shopping. I've stayed in different neighborhoods on different trips, and they each have their own distinct personality.
It's also worth noting that accommodation in Stockholm can fill up quickly during peak summer months, so booking well in advance is advisable.
Absolutely. I learned that the hard way when I spontaneously decided to extend my stay and ended up paying way more than I budgeted for. But I regret nothing. It was worth every krona to have those extra days exploring the archipelago.
Just to give listeners a general idea, what would you say is a reasonable budget range for accommodation in Stockholm?
Well, a bed in a good hostel dorm will run you about $25 to $40 by night. Mid-range hotels start around $100, $150, and luxury options can easily go over $300 tonight. But there are always deals to be found if you're flexible with dates or location.
And don't forget to check apartment rentals too. They can be a good option for longer stays and sometimes work out cheaper than hotels. Plus, you get the added benefit of having a kitchen.
Oh yes, having a kitchen can be a real money saver in Stockholm. I love visiting local supermarkets anywhere. It's a cultural experience in itself. Swedish grocery stores have all these interesting products we don't have at home.
Let's move on to digital essentials for navigating Stockholm. What apps would you recommend travelers have on their phones before arriving?
The SL app is absolutely essential. It gives you real-time updates on public transportation, helps you plan routes, and you can even buy your tickets through it. It saved me countless times when buses were rerouted or when I was trying to figure out the quickest way across the city.
Google Maps works well in Stockholm too, though it sometimes doesn't have the most up-to-date information on public transit changes or temporary closures.
That's true. I also found the official Visit Stockholm app really useful. It has curated guides and event listings that helped me discover things I might have missed otherwise. Oh, and there's a great AR feature that gives you information about landmarks when you point your camera at them.
For language help, Google Translate or Duolingo can be handy, though, as we mentioned, most Stockholmers speak excellent English.
Still, learning phrases like tack for thank you and hej for hello shows respect for the local culture. Swedes always seem delighted when I made even the smallest effort to speak Swedish.
What about internet access, Wi-Fi availability?
Wi-Fi is everywhere in Stockholm. Hotels, cafes, restaurants, museums, and even many public spaces offer free Wi-Fi. I never had trouble staying connected. The city is really tech-forward that way.
Stockholm is also almost entirely cashless. Most places prefer card payments, and some smaller establishments might not accept cash at all.
Yes. I went my entire last trip without handling a single krona. Just make sure your card doesn't charge foreign transaction fees. And mobile payment apps like Swish are popular with locals, though as a visitor you'll probably just use your credit or debit card.
Weather apps are also important since Stockholm's weather can be changeable, especially near the water.
The Swedish Meteorological and Hydrological Institute app, Janai SMHI, gives the most accurate local forecasts. I learned to always check it before heading out for the day, and it helped me plan my activities around the sunny periods. There was this one day when it predicted a brief 2-hour window without rain, and I managed to squeeze in a beautiful boat tour during exactly that window.
That's good planning. And speaking of weather, what should people pack for Stockholm?
Layers, layers, layers. Even in summer, it can get cool in the evenings, especially near the water, and a good waterproof jacket is essential any time of year. But don't stress too much about packing everything. Stockholm has excellent shopping if you find you've forgotten something.
True. And in winter, you'll definitely want proper boots, a warm coat, hat, gloves, the works. Those Baltic winds can be biting.
But winter in Stockholm is still totally doable and beautiful. The city has this gorgeous golden glow from all the lights in the windows, and snow makes everything look magical. Plus, all those famous museums are much less crowded.
Let's finish up by talking about safety and solo travel culture in Stockholm. Sweden consistently ranks as one of the safest countries for travelers.
Absolutely. I never once felt unsafe wandering around Stockholm, even late at night. The streets are well lit, there are usually people around, and there's just this general sense of security everywhere. It's one of those rare cities where, as a solo traveler, you can truly relax and enjoy yourself without constantly looking over your shoulder.
That said, the usual travel precautions still apply. Be aware of your surroundings, keep an eye on your belongings in crowded places, and don't leave valuables unattended.
Of course. Common sense never takes a vacation, right? But compared to other major European capitals, Stockholm feels remarkably safe. I was comfortable using my phone to navigate while walking around, even in the evening, which I wouldn't necessarily do everywhere.
For late-night transportation, the tunnelbana or metro runs until about 1 a.m. on weekdays and all night on weekends. There are also night buses throughout the week.
And taxis are safe and regulated, though not cheap. Be sure to use official taxis with meters. I've used the Taxi Stockholm app several times when I stayed out late enjoying the nightlife in Södermalm. The drivers were professional and friendly. One even gave me an impromptu tour when he found out it was my first visit.
Let's talk about Swedish attitudes toward personal space and interaction, as that's something that can affect the solo travel experience.
Oh, this is fascinating. Swedes do tend to value personal space more than people in many other cultures. You'll notice it right away on public transportation. If there's room to spread out, everyone will be sitting separately.
There's that stereotype of Swedes being reserved or even cold, but in my experience, that's not accurate. They're respectful of privacy and might not initiate conversations with strangers, but they're generally very helpful and friendly when approached.
Exactly. They're not intrusive, which actually makes Stockholm perfect for solo travelers who want their own space. But the moment you ask for help, that reserve melts away. I've had Stockholmers go completely out of their way to help me find a location or give recommendations.
What resources would you recommend for solo travelers who might need assistance while in Stockholm?
The tourist information centers are excellent. There's a main one at Sergels Torg and another in Gamla Stan. The staff speak perfect English and are incredibly knowledgeable. Also, hotel concierges in Stockholm tend to be exceptionally helpful, even if you're not staying at a fancy place.
And for any emergencies, the general emergency number is 112, which works for police, fire, and medical emergencies.
For non-emergency medical issues, pharmacies or apothek are everywhere, and the staff can often advise on minor health concerns. Most speak English and can help you find what you need.
Are there any community spaces or events you'd recommend for solo travelers looking to meet others?
Yes. Many hostels organize social events like walking tours or communal dinners. There are also lots of meetup groups in Stockholm. I joined a weekend hike through one and met some wonderful locals who showed me their favorite spots in the city afterward.
Fotografiska, the photography museum, has a lovely bar with a view that attracts a mix of locals and visitors. It's a nice place to strike up conversations.
And food tours. I did a food tour in Södermalm where our small group bonded over traditional Swedish dishes and craft beer. By the end, we were all exchanging contact information, and a few of us met up again later in the week. Food brings people together everywhere, but especially in Stockholm, where the culinary scene is so exciting.
Well, that brings us to the end of our first episode. We've covered quite a lot today, from Stockholm's island geography to transportation options, accommodation choices, digital tools, and safety considerations.
And we've barely scratched the surface of all the amazing things Stockholm has to offer solo travelers. I already can't wait for our next episode when we'll dive into Stockholm's must-see landmarks and attractions. The Vasa Museum alone could fill an entire episode. A 17th century warship raised almost intact from the harbor after 333 years underwater. It's mind-blowing.
We'll also be talking about Gamla the Royal Palace, the ABBA Museum, and sharing strategies for avoiding crowds at popular sites.
Plus all those incredible viewpoints where you can capture the perfect Stockholm panorama. Scandinavian sunset, there's nothing quite like it.
To summarize today's key takeaways, Stockholm is exceptionally solo traveler friendly with excellent public transportation. English is widely spoken, it's safe even at night, and the SL card is your best friend for getting around.
And remember to book accommodation early if you're visiting in peak summer months. Pack layers no matter the season, and don't be afraid to approach locals for help. They may seem reserved at first, but they're genuinely helpful.
Thank you for joining us for this first episode of Stockholm Insights. We hope you found it useful, whether you're actively planning a trip or just dreaming of visiting this beautiful city.
We'd love to hear about your own Stockholm experiences or answer any questions you might have. And if you enjoyed the episode, please share it with fellow travel enthusiasts. Until next time, or as they say in Swedish, vice is smart!
See you soon for episode 2, Stockholm's must-see landmarks and attractions. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Euroescape. I'm Clara, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be launching this new podcast series with you all today.
And I'm Leo. We're so excited to take you on this journey through Northern Europe's most solo-friendly destinations. This podcast is all about helping those independent travelers out there discover the perfect spots for exploring on your own.
Exactly. Whether you're a seasoned solo traveler or considering your first independent adventure, we'll be sharing all the tips, hidden gems, and practical advice you need to make the most of these amazing destinations.
And trust me, there's something so liberating about traveling alone in these Northern European cities. They're safe, they're accessible, and they're absolutely full of opportunities to connect with locals and other travelers if you want to.
Today we're kicking things off with Copenhagen, which I personally think is one of the absolute best cities for solo travelers. Leo, you were just there last summer, right?
I was. 3 glorious weeks in the Danish capital, and I barely scratched the surface. It's such an easy city to navigate alone, and the locals are some of the friendliest people I've met. I actually ended up extending my stay because I was having such a wonderful time.
That doesn't surprise me at all. Copenhagen consistently ranks as one of the world's most livable cities, and that same quality makes it perfect for solo travelers. The infrastructure, the culture, the design, everything just works so beautifully together.
And the biking. Oh my goodness, we have to talk about the biking. I think that's where we should start today, don't you think?
Absolutely. Let's dive into why Copenhagen is truly the solo cyclist's paradise. So let's talk about navigating Copenhagen by bicycle. Leo, I know you're a big cycling enthusiast, so I bet you were in heaven there.
Oh, Clara, you have no idea. Copenhagen's cycling infrastructure is truly world-class. There are over 350 kilometers of dedicated bike lanes throughout the city, and they're separated from both car traffic and pedestrians. It makes cycling so safe and stress-free, even for someone who hadn't been on a bike in years before my trip.
And that's exactly why it's perfect for solo travelers. You don't need to worry about complicated public transit systems or expensive taxis. Just hop on a bike and the entire city opens up to you. I remember my first day there, I rented a bike within an hour of dropping my bags at the hotel and immediately felt like a local.
That's the beauty of it, and renting bikes is super easy. There are rental shops all over the city, but I personally use the city's bike sharing program, Bicyclin. The bikes have built-in GPS tablets, which was a lifesaver for me since I have the directional sense of a spinning top.
Haha! I remember when you got lost trying to find the coffee shop that was literally across the street from our hotel in Berlin last year. But seriously, those Bicyclin bikes are great, though a bit pricier than the traditional bike rentals. For longer stays, places like Copenhagen Cycler or Bicykelli offer more economical options.
Absolutely right. And what I loved most about cycling in Copenhagen was discovering these amazing routes that really showcase the city. The Harbor Circle route was my favorite. It's about 13 kilometers and takes you along the waterfront, past the Little Mermaid statue, and through some really beautiful parks.
Oh, that's a perfect route. And for those who want something a bit shorter, the lakes route around the 3 lakes in the city center is gorgeous, especially at sunset. It's only about 6 kilometers and gives you a great feel for the city.
Speaking of feeling like a local, there's definitely some cycling etiquette to keep in mind. Danes take their cycling seriously. Always use hand signals when turning, stay to the right unless passing, and for goodness sake, don't stop in the middle of the bike lane to take photos. I may have learned that last one the hard way.
Oh no! Did you cause a bike traffic jam?
Let's just say I got some very polite but firm Danish instructions on proper bike lane usage. But once you get the hang of the rules, cycling in Copenhagen gives you this incredible freedom. You can explore at your own pace, stop whenever something catches your eye, and experience the city from a completely different perspective than you would on a tour bus.
That's exactly why I always recommend cycling for solo travelers. It's not just about getting from point A to point B, it's about the journey itself. You notice details you might miss otherwise, like the beautiful courtyard gardens peeking through archways, or the tiny cafes tucked away on side streets.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about one of my favorite Danish concepts, hygge. Clara, how would you explain hygge to someone who's never heard of it?
Oh, hygge is like this wonderful Danish philosophy that's all about coziness, comfort, and contentment. It's pronounced hygge, by the way, not hygge, like I embarrassingly called it my entire first trip to Denmark. But it's really about creating this warm atmosphere and enjoying life's simple pleasures.
Exactly. And what makes Copenhagen so special for solo travelers is how perfectly hygge counterbalances any loneliness you might feel on the road. There's something so comforting about curling up in a cozy cafe with a book and a cup of coffee when you're traveling alone.
Absolutely. And Copenhagen has some of the most hyggelicious cafes I've ever experienced. My personal favorite is the living room in the Latin Quarter. It literally feels like sitting in someone's cozy living room with mismatched vintage furniture and candles everywhere. I spent an entire rainy afternoon there just reading and people watching.
Oh, I love that place. Did you sink into that impossibly deep armchair by the window? I think I accidentally took a 2-hour nap there after having one too many cardamom buns.
Yes, that exact chair, and no judgment on the nap, those cardamom buns are dangerously good. But that's exactly the beauty of hygge for solo travelers. No one rushes you or gives you weird looks for lingering. It's totally acceptable to spend hours in these spaces.
And hygge changes with the seasons, which makes Copenhagen worth visiting year-round. In winter, it's all about those candles. Danes burn more candles per capita than anywhere else in Europe, and cozy blankets. Cafes like Paludan Bug Cafe, which is part bookstore, part cafe, are perfect winter hit spots.
And in summer, hygge moves outdoors. One of my favorite summer hajj experiences was joining the locals at Islands Bridge Harbor Bath. Just bring a towel, a good book, and maybe a small picnic, and you can spend hours sunbathing and taking refreshing dips in the clean harbor water. Even alone, I felt completely comfortable there.
I think that's what makes hygge so perfect for solo travelers. It's this cultural permission to slow down and enjoy your own company. You don't need a big group to experience hygge. In fact, sometimes it's even better alone.
Definitely. And I love incorporating little hygge rituals into my travel routine, like always carrying a small candle in my suitcase or treating myself to fresh flowers from my hotel room. These tiny touches make solo travel feel special rather than lonely.
Those are great tips. I've started carrying a small portable coffee maker because nothing says haggage to me like making my own perfect cup of coffee while watching the sunrise from my accommodation. It's those quiet moments of contentment that really make solo travel in Copenhagen magical.
So we've talked about biking and hygge, but one thing that makes Copenhagen absolutely perfect for solo travelers is the incredible architecture and design. It's like an open-air museum of stunning buildings and thoughtful urban planning.
You're so right. And the best part is, you can create your own self-guided architecture tours based on your specific interests. I'm obsessed with modern architecture, so I spend an entire day just exploring buildings designed by Jark Hingels and his firm, BG.
The 8 house in Orestad is absolutely mind-blowing. I remember walking up that spiral pathway that goes from ground level all the way to the 10th floor. The views from the top were incredible, and I loved how the building creates this sense of community, even though it's massive.
Yes, and what I appreciate about Copenhagen's architectural landmarks is how accessible they are. So many famous buildings are either public spaces or have areas open to visitors, like the Royal Danish Library, the Black Diamond, where you can just walk in and admire the stunning interior without paying an entrance fee.
Absolutely. For solo travelers on a budget, I always recommend starting with a walking route through central Copenhagen. You can see the colorful Nyhavn Harbor, the Royal Danish Playhouse with its stunning glass facade, the Opera House across the harbor, and then cross the Circle Bridge, designed by Olafur Eliasson, all without spending a single krone.
And don't forget about all the incredible photo opportunities. As a solo traveler, I'm always looking for those Instagram-worthy spots, and Copenhagen delivers at every turn. The Superkilen Urban Park in Nørrebro is a photographer's dream with its bold, red color scheme and international collection of urban furniture.
Oh, I love Superkilen. Did you take one of those swings from Baghdad? I spent way too long playing there, probably looking like a complete child, but it was so much fun.
I absolutely did. No shame in embracing your inner child, especially when traveling solo. You don't have anyone there to judge you. Speaking of impressive design, the Danish Design Museum is a must-visit. It's fairly small, so it's perfect for solo exploration, and the exhibits on Danish furniture design are fascinating.
And it's reasonably priced compared to some other museums. For design enthusiasts on a tighter budget, I also recommend checking out Ilum's Bolighuis department store. It's like a museum of contemporary Danish design where you can see the latest furniture and home goods, and no one minds if you're just browsing.
That's such a good tip. I think that's what I appreciate most about Danish design, this combination of functionality and beauty. Even the most ordinary things like trash cans or bus stops are thoughtfully designed. It really makes you notice details you might overlook elsewhere.
Exactly. And that attention to design extends to making the city accessible for everyone, which is another reason it's so solo, traveler-friendly. The clear signage, the intuitive public transportation, the well-thought-out public spaces, it all adds up to a city that's easy to navigate on your own.
Now, even though Copenhagen is a vibrant urban center, one of its greatest strengths for solo travelers is the abundance of gorgeous green spaces and urban oases scattered throughout the city.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. There's something so calming about having access to parks and gardens when you're traveling alone. It gives you these perfect moments to decompress, reflect on your experiences, or just enjoy some fresh air.
Exactly. And King's Garden, or Kongens, is probably my favorite spot in the entire city. It's Denmark's oldest royal garden, dating back to the early 1600s, and it surrounds Rosenborg Castle. I spent an entire afternoon there last summer just reading on the lawn and people watching.
It's especially magical during spring when the cherry blossoms are in bloom. I remember visiting during that time and it was like walking through a pink cloud. I actually brought a small picnic and ate lunch under the trees, which is a perfect solo activity because you can take your time and really soak in the atmosphere.
That sounds absolutely lovely. Another green space I fell in love with was Assistens Cemetery in Nørrebro. I know a cemetery might sound like an odd recommendation, but it's more like a peaceful park where locals jog and relax. Plus, Hans Christian Andersen is buried there, which adds this wonderful literary connection.
I completely agree about Assistens. It's so serene, and I found it really moving to visit Hans Christian Andersen's grave. Something about paying respects to the author of stories that shaped my childhood felt very special. And you're right, locals treat it almost like a park. I saw people reading, sketching, and even having quiet picnics.
And we absolutely have to mention the harbor bathing opportunities. Idens Bridge is probably the most famous spot, but there are several harbor bath locations around the city. The water is incredibly clean. You can literally swim in the middle of the capital city.
It's such a unique urban experience. I was initially a bit nervous about harbor swimming alone, but I found it to be incredibly safe and welcoming. There are lifeguards present during opening hours, clear entry and exit points, and plenty of locals who are happy to show newcomers the ropes.
That's a great point about safety for solo travelers. And the seasonal activities in these spaces are wonderful too. In summer, there are open-air movie screenings in parks like Fieldparken, and in winter, Tivoli Gardens transforms into this magical winter wonderland with lights and decorations.
Oh, Tivoli in winter is absolutely magical. Though it's not free like many of the other green spaces, it's worth every penny for the ambiance alone. I went last December and spent hours just wandering among the Christmas decorations and lights, sipping Vlog Danish mulled wine, and feeling perfectly content in my solo adventure.
That sounds wonderful. I think what makes Copenhagen's green spaces so perfect for solo travelers is how they offer these moments of tranquility amid the excitement of exploring a new city. Sometimes when traveling alone, you need those quiet spaces to recharge.
Absolutely. And I've found that parks and gardens are where I've had some of my most memorable encounters with locals. There's something about the relaxed atmosphere that makes striking up conversations feel more natural. I once got recommendations for an amazing non-touristy restaurant from a local dog walker in Frederiksberg Gardens. Let's talk about one aspect of solo travel that people often worry about: making connections with locals. Copenhagen is actually one of the easiest places I found to meet people, despite the stereotype that Scandinavians can be reserved.
I completely agree. I think the key is understanding a bit about Danish social culture before you go. For instance, Danes tend to value their personal space, so striking up random conversations on public transportation might not get the warmest response. But in the right context, they're incredibly friendly and often speak perfect English.
That's such a good point. I've found that activity-based socializing works really well in Copenhagen. For example, I joined a guided food tour of the Torfahaller market on my last trip, and it was a small group of maybe 8 people, including several locals who were just enthusiastic about food. We ended up going for drinks afterward, and I'm still in touch with a couple of them.
Food is always a great connector. I had a similar experience at a cocktail workshop at Ruby Bar. It was this hands-on experience where we learned to make traditional Danish cocktails with aquavit, and the informal setting made conversations so natural. I met this lovely Danish couple who ended up showing me their favorite jazz club the following evening.
Those kinds of authentic local experiences are priceless. And for anyone worried about the language barrier, I can honestly say it's virtually non-existent in Copenhagen. Almost everyone speaks excellent English, though I always try to learn a few basic Danish phrases as a courtesy.
Definitely. Even my terrible pronunciation of tak for thank you always got appreciated smiles. Speaking of community spaces, I found that places like Absalon in Vesterbro are perfect for solo travelers looking to connect. It's this converted church where they host communal dinners at long tables, so you naturally end up chatting with the people around you.
Absalon is wonderful. I went to their Friday night bingo session, which was hilariously challenging since the numbers were called in Danish, but everyone around me was helping out and we were all laughing together. It felt so inclusive.
That sounds like so much fun. I also want to mention how great digital resources can be for making connections. I used the Meetup app to find a running group that met near my accommodation and joined them for a few morning runs along the lakes. It was a perfect way to exercise, see the city, and chat with a mix of locals and expats.
Social media can be surprisingly useful too. I followed a bunch of Copenhagen-focused Instagram accounts before my trip and noticed a post about a photography walk happening during my stay. I showed up, met about 15 other photography enthusiasts, and spent a lovely afternoon capturing the city together.
That's such a smart approach. And for solo travelers who enjoy a more structured way to meet people, Copenhagen has some excellent hostels with social atmospheres, even if you're not staying there. Places like Generator and Urban House have bars that are open to the public and often host events like quiz nights or live music.
Absolutely. And one last tip I'd share is to be open to unexpected conversations. Some of my favorite Copenhagen memories involve spontaneous chats, like the time I asked for help understanding a menu item at a cafe, and ended up getting recommendations for the entire rest of my trip from a friendly local at the next table. Sometimes the best connections happen when you least expect them.
Well, Claire, we've covered quite a lot today about Copenhagen as a solo traveler's paradise. From cycling through the city to embracing Hig culture, exploring design landmarks, enjoying green spaces, and connecting with locals, I think we've given our listeners a pretty comprehensive guide to the Danish capital.
We definitely have, and I hope we've shown why Copenhagen is such a perfect starting point for solo adventures in Northern Europe. It combines safety, accessibility, and that special Danish warmth that makes traveling alone feel not lonely at all, but liberating and exciting.
Absolutely. I think my key takeaway would be to embrace the bicycle culture. It truly transforms how you experience the city and gives you this wonderful sense of freedom and independence that's perfect for solo travel.
Great point. And I'd add that allowing yourself to slow down and embrace Hig is essential in Copenhagen. Don't rush from attraction to attraction. Take time to sip coffee in cozy cafes, stroll through parks, and soak in the atmosphere. That's when the magic of solo travel in Denmark really happens.
I couldn't agree more. And for anyone worried about the cost, because let's face it, Scandinavia isn't the cheapest destination, remember that many of Copenhagen's best experiences, like cycling along the harbor or relaxing in the beautiful parks, are completely free.
That's so true. And with a little planning, like picking up picnic supplies from a supermarket or using the city card for attractions, Copenhagen can be more affordable than you might expect.
Well, I'm already dreaming about my next visit. Well, that's all for today's episode of Euro Escape. If you enjoy our Copenhagen guide, please share it with any solo travels in your life or anyone considering taking the leap into independent adventure.
And we'd love to hear about your own Copenhagen experiences or questions. You can reach us on our social media channels or through our website. Until next time, happy solo traveling, everyone.